Again, happy holidays and welcome to Preservation Virginia's virtual cocktail party here at the Cold Digs House. We're so happy you could join us on this wintry night, and we hope that you and yours are well and navigating the uncertainties that have been abundant this year. So we'll have some updates from our historic sites, news about conservation and restoration efforts, and our public policy and advocacy work that hasn't missed a beat at all this year. We're going to have a little entertainment thrown in the middle, and because this is a cocktail party, even though it's virtual, we will have a little mingling session. So you can say hello to some of your friends and meet new acquaintances tonight. It's an experiment, so you'll have to bear with us, but we hope it'll be fun and a relief from all the sort of day-to-day repeat that has been this period in 2020. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Jenny Keller, our board chair. Jenny has been a wonder this year, a steady hand, offering insightful guidance as we've charted these waters that were pretty much unknown. And she's also been helping us through our strategic planning process. So I'm going to open the door to the Cold Digs House. No, I'm not. We're locked out. We're going to open the door to the Cold Digs House and take you to Charlottesville, where Jenny is.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for the magic carpet. Quickest trip I've ever made from Richmond to Charlottesville, and I'm sure made enough of those. But yes, we're all home for the holidays, and thank you for joining us from the comfort and safety of your own homes. I'm so happy tonight to be able to visit with you from the dining room of my 1870s house in downtown Charlottesville's historic district. This has been my Zoom central for the last 10 months. And for me, like for most of you, it's been a most unusual year, but it's been a unique and often rewarding time as well. For some of us, it has now been a year since we've been together in person. And for others of us, it's been 10 months since we've been in the same place. But we haven't let that stop us from getting together from our home office desks, our family room easy chairs, kitchens, living rooms, and even porches and patios. Our board has been remarkable, and I am honored to lead this group of dedicated and generous Virginians. Because we've stayed in touch with each other and continued to champion historic places, my preservation oximeter tells me that we're doing well for 2020. All my readings are well above 95. It's been a busy 10 months, and our staff has not skipped a step. Incredible and talented, they sprang into action to meet the challenges of 2020 in innovative ways, notably by going virtual and creating electronic webinars to share with community preservationists and tours and field trips that help Virginia families and hundreds of students and educators enrich their challenging months of unanticipated virtual schooling with live stream lessons at our historic sites. After opening our historic sites briefly in March, we quickly found that we needed to close because of the pandemic. But in the summer, we were able to resume operations and welcome visitors with special socially distant programming and new self-guided auto tours that we continued until closing for the winter last week. Over the last 10 months, Preservation Virginia staff has produced 24 educational videos, hosted 9 webinars, and we've become a positive presence on social media, attracting 4,500 views on YouTube and 35,000 views on Facebook. We even have an international audience with webinar participants from England, Poland, and Lithuania. We have a lot more videos in the pipeline, and several webinars are planned already for January and beyond. And we're learning so many good lessons from this experience. So we believe that even after in-person events resume, we're committed to continuing to produce digital content online. It's many people's hard work that makes preservation succeed in Virginia, and it takes all of us: professionals, volunteers, donors, community activists, investments, and government officials. Our combined preservation leadership has resulted in the continued saving of historic places and invigorating preservation efforts throughout the Commonwealth. Our major ongoing activity this year, and one that continues into 2021, is strategic planning. We have retained David Brown, no stranger to Virginia, through his new consulting firm, Bearden and Brown, to lead us through strategic planning. This planning process has been full of rewarding and vigorous dialogue with individuals and other organizations across Virginia. And we've gained valuable insights and important perspectives from more than 150 people, as well as from our partner and allied organizations. These discussions are helping us respond to current challenges, and they're also setting a positive tone for the kind of preservation that seeks a more complete understanding of our past, values the connections between people and place, and supports and strengthens our protection of the places where history has happened. As our work continues into a new and hopefully healthier and safer period of our own history, I applaud your continued engagement and important role in preservation in Virginia. And I'm so glad that you took time to celebrate the winter holidays with us tonight. And I wish all of you the very best for 2021. Won't we all be so happy to welcome a new year? And now I'm going to turn to Ron Hurst, one of our vice chairs and the chair of our Preservation Services Committee, to update you on our preservation services and museum operations. Ron.
Well, thank you, Jenny, and greetings from Williamsburg. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces here. And as Jenny said, we're so grateful for all that you do to help us continue to preserve the Commonwealth. I have to tell you that I have a long history with the organization, but I have never seen a more talented team than we have right now in museum operations. In the face of pandemic, of social unrest, of economic uncertainties this year, they have continued to move us forward, dealing with the collections, carrying out restoration projects, and operating our historic sites with great flexibility. I know you want to hear what they've been doing, so without further delay, let me turn it over to our wonderful museum operations team.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. My name is Jennifer Hurst-Wender, and I'm the Director of Museum Operations and Education for Preservation Virginia. And I second Ron's sentiment that our team, Leah Lane and Eric Litchford, have just been absolutely remarkable, as well as all of our historic site coordinators and interpretive staff. But I also wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all of our supporters. I know that many of you came to know the organization through associations with our various historic sites. And I wanted you to know that they continue to be preserved this year, even with all of the trials that 2020 has brought us. And that these efforts couldn't have happened without your support, so thank you. And so I'm going to share the screen real quick, and we're gonna do a slideshow. I hope this works.
Looks good, Jen, coming through.
Yeah, all right, yeah. Great, good news. Okay, so here we are with our museum wrap up. And so this year started out was probably the most remarkable event that I've had the privilege of being a part of in my time at Preservation Virginia. So on February 29th, and what seemed like a lifetime ago, we partnered with the University of Oklahoma Center for the Study of American Indian Law and Policy, and also the Virginia Museum of History and Culture, to host John Marshall, the Supreme Court, and the Trail of Tears. Now, this symposium featured 5 speakers that discussed the impacts and legacy of the Marshall Trilogy. The trilogy cases are a set of 3 Supreme Court decisions that affirm the legal and political standing of Indian nations in the United States. And so in the photo, you can see Cherokee Principal Chief Chuck Hoskins Jr. and our keynote speaker, Lindsay Robertson, who is a Supreme Court Justice for the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. Amongst other amazing symposium speakers, we had the opportunity to discuss Marshall's role and also have these fine folks over to the Marshall House for a tour and dinner as well. So at the beginning of 2020, the museum operations team gained these two wonderful new staff members. So Leah Lane joined Preservation Virginia as Curator of Collections and Eric Litchford as Preservation Projects Manager. And so it was with this brand new and talented staff that the Museum Operations Department was able to navigate this uncharted territory that 2020 brought us. And so it was almost an onboarding process that we worked to develop a self-guided cell phone tour of the grounds of Scotchtown, Smithsport, and Bacon's Castle. Learning the sites as they went, we were able to craft a socially distant way for 3,400 people to call in and experience our cell phone tours at the historic sites and have a much needed opportunity to get out into the open. So many of you have also attended our webinars, watched the videos, read the blogs that we have worked to produce as alternates to the in-person visit. And we plan to continue these new digital avenues even as we welcome back our in-person guests. Now here you can see some of the slides. So the historic staff at the sites were nothing short of remarkable this year. So when we were closed, the interpreters shifted to projects like painting. You can see one of our interpreters painting the bench at Cape Henry Lighthouse. Or fences at the John Marshall House. We rolled out a new online closed group ticketing system, and our interpreters bravely navigated this new technology, donned their PPE, and were able to give tours to closed groups with social distance and with an awful lot of grace. And we were also able to experiment with digital field trips. So up in the top left-hand corner, you can see two high school teachers from Chesterfield County, and we were able to welcome over 400 students and faculty to Scotchtown and the John Marshall House, thanks to the magic of technology. And so now I'm going to pass this off to Leah Lane, our Curator of Collections.
Thanks, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, I'm Leah Lane, Curator of Collections, and I'm going to share with you a couple of the exciting things we've discovered and brought into our collection over the past year. Now, around here, we like to joke that you can't stick a spade in the ground at Bacon's Castle without finding something interesting. And it's a big reason why we actually require proper archaeology at our sites anytime we dig deeper than about 8 inches. So when we needed to dig a couple of post holes for some COVID-19 precaution signage, we actually called up our own Sonia Ingram, who you're going to hear from later, who is a trained archaeologist, and she did what's called a couple of test pits. So she found in those 2 small holes 154 artifacts, roughly dating to the mid-18th century, including wine bottle bases, a bead, and English ceramics, among many others. So Nicholas Lucchetti and Rebecca Planto from the James River Institute for Archaeology later returned to Bacon's Castle to kind of expand out those test pits. And they have determined that the feature they found is probably the outer edge of a filled-in well, but they're hoping to do some further work. Now, they found a lot of things, but my favorite thing was this large portion of a circa 1750 Chinese export coffee or chocolate cup. And it's actually a good comparison with this intact example, which was recovered from a shipwreck known as the Nanking Cargo. We know that the occupants of Bacon's Castle enjoyed their chocolate beverages in costly cups as early as 1728. The 1755 inventory, Bacon's Castle is fabulous for the number of inventories we have to understand what was inside the house at different moments. So in 1755, we have another inventory, and chocolate cups show up on 2 different tea tables. So somebody in that time period was a little clumsy and must have knocked off a cup from one of those tables, but it's great for us to have that today. The most exciting addition to our collection in the past year is this circa 1775 walnut fall front desk, which we believe was owned by Patrick Henry. It is the gift of Granville Valentine IV, Thomas Valentine, and Francis Valentine Massey. We know of very few surviving objects that were at Scotchtown around 1771 to 1778 when the Henrys called it home. And there's only one contemporary description of the space, which said that it was of the plainest sort, consisting of necessaries only, nothing for show or for ornament. So this pared down, what we call neat and plain style desk would have been perfectly at home there. And we don't yet know who made this, the cabinet maker of this object. But in the course of our research, we realized that one of Patrick Henry's cousins, a gentleman named George Donald, immigrated from Scotland and worked as a cabinet maker in the area. And we know that he did some work for Thomas Jefferson. So could he have also done some for his cousin as well, Patrick Henry? The research is still ongoing, but we're so excited to perhaps have brought back this desk to Scotchtown after 244 years. So now I'm going to pass this along to Eric Litchford, our Preservation Projects Manager.
Thanks, Leah. I am Eric Litchford, the Preservation Projects Manager. I want to share two of the bigger restoration projects we've had at our sites this year. The building you see right now is the barn at Bacon's Castle. And the rear of the building actually dates to the 18th century. And this deteriorated section up front is a 19th century addition that was added on later, where a lot of our work has occurred this year. So here you can see our wonderful restoration team. They're on the right looking pretty satisfied with themselves because they just got all new sills installed, and they're able to retrofit those sills into the existing original repaired framing. So we were really able to restabilize that whole section of porch. And part of the reason that shed porch addition is so important is it actually protects exterior 18th century features on the original section of the barn. So up high on the left, you can see original pine siding boards still in place. And then under the shed roof addition, we actually still have a couple courses of original shingles, which is a incredibly rare survival. And more recently, we've actually been focusing on the doors of the 18th century section of the building. And when we removed modern 20th century door trim, we actually found a intact wrought iron doorkeeper, which is the piece of metal you see on the right. So that was really exciting for us. We're hoping we can use the sizing of the keeper and the wood cutout for the lock bolt to actually recreate accurate replica locks for the doors. So yeah, this building is just continually full of surprises, and it's been a great project. The other big project we've had this year was a restoration on the stairs inside the Cape Henry Lighthouse. The project started out as a lead abatement, but it turns out that there is a Coast Guard inspection report from 1867 that says the stairs are red. This is important because that 1867 is actually the year the stairs were installed. So you can see them here before we started working. Showing black paint. So we decided to do some paint analysis on it. And so on the right, you can actually see when the paint samples are blown up under the microscope, we get some wonderful original red layers. So we were really excited to see, the actual physical evidence match the documentary evidence. And we were able to recreate that color and then return the lighthouse to its original shade, which you can see here. I hope you guys enjoyed that presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer.
All right, everybody. And so there's a lot more that we've done, but those are the highlights. And now we have a special presentation to get us into the holiday spirit. So I hope that you enjoy two carols that are sung by the Greater Richmond Children's Choir.
We wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, as they sing the beautiful choirs and all winter solstice, glad tidings we bring to you and your King. We wish you a joyful holiday and a happy New Year. Now bring us something golden, from
going to sing along, I'll say that. So I think yet another example of needing to get creative this year in order to continue fulfilling our nonprofit missions here in Richmond. So we really appreciate the Greater Richmond Children's Choir providing that piece for us. So, well, with that, we're going to turn it over to Trip Pollard and Sonia Ingram. So I'm going to get them queued up here. So Trip Pollard is the chair of our Public Policy Committee, which of course is critical to our mission and our work. And Sonia Ingram is our Preservation Field Services Manager. And she's down in Danville, but really covers the whole state for us. So Trip and Sonia, do y'all want to take it away?
All right, I will get started while Sonia brings up the slides. Thanks so much, Will, and good evening, everybody. I'm glad we can be together this evening, and also glad to share a bit about our public policy work. Preservation Virginia has significantly expanded this work in recent years. We are deeply involved in a host of issues, working with our partners and with communities on specific projects and issues, opposing destructive projects that would harm our unique and irreplaceable historic and cultural resources, advocating for and encouraging preservation-related policies and programs at the state and local levels, as well as the federal level, and educating the public on the benefits of preservation. So next slide, if you would. Some of the main areas of work are listed on your screen. Among other things, we provided direct assistance on well over 100 preservation issues statewide this year. We also conducted our 2020 Most Endangered Historic Places program, which Sonia will talk about in a moment. We held a summer webinar series, as well as a conference on protecting African American historic sites, as well as continued to work on a number of our special projects, such as the Virginia Indians program, tobacco barns, Rosenwald schools, and African American cemeteries work. And again, we'll hear a little bit more about that in a moment. The bottom line is we may be in a pandemic, but we have been engaged on a number of fronts, and our extensive policy and community engagement work has continued despite this being a very challenging year. And I would like to give special thanks to Sonia for all of her work on these issues, as well as to Elizabeth, Jenny, and all the members of Preservation Virginia's Public Policy Committee. Despite the challenges this year, being in a pandemic, Preservation Virginia truly is serving as the Commonwealth's leading preservation advocate. And now I'd like to turn it over to Sonia to talk a bit about our Endangered Sites program.
Our Most Endangered Historic Places program is held to raise awareness on endangered sites across the state every year. It's an annual program that we have. 7 places made the list this year. And I'm just going to briefly go over those. Rassawek, this is the historic capital and sacred site of the Monacan Indian Nation, located in Fluvanna County, and it's in danger by destruction by a water intake system. The Pine Grove School community. This is a historic African-American community centered around Pine Grove Rosenwald School in Cumberland County. And this is threatened by a proposed large landfill. Halifax Roller Mill made the list this year. This is a flour and feed mill in Halifax, the town of Halifax, that was the center of the community. It was constructed in 1915, and it is threatened by water damage. Historic metal truss bridges. In the 1970s, Virginia had over 600 of these metal truss bridges, but today approximately 5% of these remain. This is an issue that Piedmont Environmental Council and others have been working on for a few years. The Alexandria Elks Club. This is an anchor. This was a Elks Lodge that was an anchor for the African American community in the Parker Gray Historic District for over 115 years. And it's been vacant for a while, and it's also threatened by water damage. This is the interior of it. James Street Holiness Church made our list this year. This was a church founded in 1891 by African-American woman named Betty Thompson in Danville. This illustrates the rich but little studied history of the African-American community in North Danville, and also the history of African-American women religious leaders. It's been vacant for a while, and it was damaged by Hurricane Michael in 2018. And Loudoun County's rural roads, this made our list. This is a living museum of 300 miles of gravel roadways and scenic landscapes under threat from the region's rapid development. So that's just a little bit, very small bit of information on these 7 sites. We encourage you to go to our website for more information on these, as well as information on all of our sites from the previous years. We'll have an announcement in January for our upcoming 2021 Most Endangered Historic Places list and how you can submit applications to that coming up. And now Tripp is going to provide a few updates on Rassawek.
Thanks, Sonia. So, as Sonia mentioned, Rassawek is one of items that was on our most endangered list this year. It is the historic capital of the Monacan Indian Nation, and numerous archaeological and potential burial sites have been documented at this site. Department of Historic Resources has found several archaeological sites to be potentially eligible for listing in the National Register, and the site holds immense cultural importance to the Monacan Nation. The area also contains historic resources from the Revolutionary War and the Civil War periods that are listed on the National Register, as well as the Virginia Register. Yet, as Sonia mentioned, there is a proposal to build a raw water intake and a pump station at this site to withdraw water from the James River for use in Fluvanna and Louisa County. And next slide. As Sonia mentioned, Preservation Virginia did include this site on our list of most endangered historic places. In addition, subsequently, the National Trust named Rassawek to their most endangered historic places list. Over 12,000 organizations and individuals have now expressed their opposition to the project. Preservation Virginia and the Southern Environmental Law Center have filed comments opposing the permits that are needed to build this project. And the issue has also received significant press coverage. In October, the Water Authority announced it would look into alternative sites after many years of pushing for this. Examination of alternatives for a new site and a pipeline is now underway, and Preservation Virginia will continue to work to save Rasswick. Now I'll turn it over to Sonia to tell you about some other significant projects.
Thank you. And just briefly want to talk a little bit more about the Pine Grove School community, another one of our endangered sites this year. And as we were saying earlier, this is a community, it's under threat from a 1,200 acre mega landfill in Cumberland County. And if it's approved, the landfill will fundamentally change the historic character of this 100-year-old community and put these residents at risk from major environmental hazards. Currently, the landfill is undergoing review for state and federal permits, and the Preservation Virginia, the Southern Environmental Law Center, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and the Environmental Law Community Engagement Clinic at the University of Virginia School of Law are all working with the local organization, the AMMD Pine Grove Project, and that's the organization made up of people that attended the school and live in that community. And all of these organizations and other organizations have written letters to the Army Corps of Engineers raising concerns for the environmental impact of the project and requesting a full EIS environmental report. And here's just a few more pictures of the Pine Grove School community and some of the people in the AMMD organization. So just briefly, other than our most endangered sites, as Tripp mentioned at the beginning, we have worked on many preservation issues around the state, including some that are new, such as the Augusta County Courthouse issue that's ongoing currently, but also issues and projects that have been ongoing and ones that we've worked on for a few years, such as the James River Power Line, Shockoe Bottom, at Rosenwald schools, tobacco barns, and historic cemeteries. These are a few images from one of our cemetery projects. This is the Flippin Cemetery in Danville. We have been able to work with the Southside African American Cemetery Preservation Society on cleanup of the cemetery and having the cemetery mapped. We're also having a webinar. We also had a webinar earlier this year on African American cemeteries in Loudoun County. And the recording of that is on our website if you are interested in taking a look at that. These are just a few more images with working on cemeteries. Tobacco barns. These are a few images from our tobacco barns program. We're continuing to work on this. We had repairs done to 7 tobacco barns this year, and that leaves us with 2 more in our mini grants program. So at the conclusion of this program next year, we will have repaired 63 tobacco barns in a 3-county region. We also had research and some 3D scanning done on 2 early tobacco barns, one in the top left corner there that we were not able to save, but we did do some research and mapping on that. And also we've continued to working on our Rosenwald schools and early African American schools. This is the top image is the Shipman School. That's not a Rosenwald school, but it's certainly important. And in Mecklenburg County, the Shiloh School. So this is just a little brief information from some of our statewide preservation work this year. We encourage everybody to go to our website for more information and updates. And I'm gonna turn this back over to Tripp to talk a little bit about the General Assembly work, but I wanted to echo Jen by saying that none of this would be possible without the support of you. So thank you very much. Tripp, go ahead.
So wrap up this quick summary of our multifaceted policy work with a little description of a key component of this policy work, which is focused on the General Assembly. In the 2020 session earlier this year, we were successful in getting an important bill passed that requires the State Corporation Commission, prior to approving construction of electrical transmission lines, to determine that a line will avoid or reasonably minimize impacts to the greatest extent practical on scenic assets, historic resources, and the environment. Also in the 2020 session and in a special session the General Assembly had this year, we focused on getting increased resources for the Department of Historic Resources. And we had some successes, but then the pandemic hit and a number of these increases were frozen. The next session of the General Assembly begins January 13th, so right around the corner. Typically, it would be a 45-day session, but there's a lot of maneuvering going on over the length and shape of this session. And it's going to be interesting trying to conduct it and weigh in on behalf of preservation values and goals during the pandemic. There are likely to be a number of items Preservation Virginia will be involved with. Among other things, we expect a bill to expand easement eligibility to allow register eligible as well as registered properties, lowering the hurdle to resource protection. And we'll also be working on budget amendments. The governor's proposed amendments released just this morning include $25 million in historic justice initiatives, including Monument Avenue and Shockoe Bottom in Richmond. And we're happy to see it also include funding proposed for DHR to hire a historic preservationist professional to administer projects involving historic cemeteries, which is something Preservation Virginia has pushed for a number of years. Although DHR needs much more than that, this is something that we're hoping to at least secure this session. In addition, as always, we will remain vigilant to protect the historic rehab tax credits against any attempt to weaken or eliminate this absolutely critical preservation tool. We'll have a legislative preview session January 7th at noon and a virtual legislative reception this year during the session. I hope all of you can attend that. We'll also get our legislative updates and otherwise be engaged in the legislative process. So thank you so much for your support of the range of essential public policy work that we're doing. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Trish. As you can see, that's just a dusting of what we've been doing over the last 12 months, and intensely over the last 10 months. We hope this evening has brought you a bit more understanding of our work, a bit of cheer. And before we go into our mingling portion of the evening, I want to express our sincere thanks to all of you for your support in this unprecedented time. It's been mentioned several times during this evening, but your contributions more than ever have helped light the way in what could have been a very grim year. Your support has enabled us to safely open our historic sites, to host digital programming, and continue our advocacy across the Commonwealth. In some ways, we feel that though we're not in the car, we're seeing more people, more friends from all regions of the state, because we are able to Zoom or otherwise connect with them virtually. We've only touched on a few of the things that we've accomplished, so I would encourage you to visit our website. I saw that Jen put the address up on the chat. You can explore some of the blogs that go in more depth about the subjects that we talked about tonight, and some that we weren't able to introduce. I also want to acknowledge our staff and the members of our Board of Trustees. This has been a difficult year. It's been a difficult year for everyone, but to keep a nonprofit moving forward is an extraordinary task. Their thoughtful approach and hard work has made our successes possible. And I think it speaks to the confidence that we have, that we're undergoing strategic planning at the same time, so we can be prepared for the future. Thank you, Jenny, for acknowledging my tenure with Preservation Virginia. It's truly been an adventure. It's been an honor. And it's so lovely to see folks that are on this webinar tonight that have been part of the organization for so many years. I've enjoyed my tenure here, and there's so much more to do. For 2020 and this pandemic, it seems that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but we'll still have many months and probably years before things return to just as we remember them. Preservation Virginia is poised to have learned from this unprecedented time and to be more relevant and viable into the future. So I want to thank you for investing in Preservation Virginia and having confidence in our programs and the future of the Commonwealth.